YouTube, I'm back on my sports channel. I know people be like, dude, this is a sports channel. Why you not making any sports videos? Because on my other main channel, I've had to jock for position. See, in the spirit of sports, when you want to be the best of the best, when you want to be number one, you have to defend your championship title. And sometimes when you got three YouTube channels, which I used to have three, but then it got so competitive that I ended up having like almost 7 YouTube channels. I got like 5 or 6 YouTube channels. When it gets that competitive, you have to prioritize your time. I have like 3 different audiences. One audience likes sex and dating, and the other audience likes movies, television, and anime, and then my other audience is sports. And I apologize to the people who love sports. We're almost finished with the Boxing What If series. This is episode 9, and you'll be surprised what episode 10 will be. And then once the boxing series is concluded, we're going to focus on mixed martial arts, UFC. Because I know there's somebody in there that likes mixed martial arts. And I'm going to do a MMA What If in that too. It'll be like a spinoff of the boxing series. I'm still going to make some new channels. I haven't gotten around to it because with the accident, nobody anticipated or inspect the big boom that is on YouTube. And let's just leave it at that because we don't want these videos demonetized, taken down for saying inappropriate stuff. So I promise you that I was going to do another boxing fight. I was going to bring back 2 old school boxing legends that started their boxing careers in the late 80s, early 90s, all the way into the 2000s. And both these fighters started around the same time. And both these fighters in their careers at the same time. And both these fighters have won 6 championships apiece. And they both have something in common. They both started off doing particularly very well. And both these fighters could have gone on to greatness. But for one fighter, it was alcohol and drugs and temptation. And for the other fighter, it was almost exactly the same thing. And you could see how both these fighters could have gone through history as the greatest. That is Roy Jones Jr., one of my all-time favorite fighters in the boxing game, versus James Toney. Now, I know you're probably saying, Alex, these two already fought each other. Yeah, in the cruiserweight and middleweight and lightweight division. But I'm talking about these guys both became heavyweights. Yeah, in the 2000s, they became a heavyweight. Both won heavyweight championships, and the question you would ask if you became a heavyweight, shouldn't you continue that rivalry as a heavyweight? That's why this video is being made. Hold on. Apparently, there are some sexy black women and sexy mamacitas, Mexican women at 7-Eleven that, particularly because of the accident, they be watching my sports videos. Hold on. We'll make sure I do it at the end of the video. Alright. It's going to be Roy Jones Jr. Hold on, I said it wrong. Let me say it the way Michael Beffer would say it. Roy Jones Jr. versus James Toney. I said, are you ready? I said, are you ready? Let's get ready to rumble. Boxing What If. Roy Jones Jr. versus James Toney as a heavyweight. Now, it's true these two fighters fought each other before, like 25 years ago, but never as a heavyweight. Roy Jones Jr. did go to the Korean, Seoul, Korea Olympic game, and as he said in his rap song, They Must Have Forgot, he got robbed of a gold medal. I think there's parallels between Roy Jones Jr. and Evander Holyfield. Both went to Olympics, both got robbed of an Olympic gold medal. Of course, Roy got a gold medal, just wasn't a gold medal, it was the bronze or the silvers. Which, yeah, you can see how disappointing that is. And then finally, yes, I have a script with me. Finally, in 1988, he turned professional. He went from amateur to professional, and Roy Jones was like told he was like the second coming of Sugar Ray Leonard. Like he was told he was like another Sugar Ray Leonard. He had an orthodox style. He could knock you out with his left hand, but Roy was a little different because Roy could hit you with the right hook, left jab, and it turned out that he could not only just knock you out with a left hand, he could knock you out with his right hand. He was very fast in boxing. He had the same speed as Sugar Ray Leonard. He had the same counter style, and he could box in sequences. And he could slow the fight down. He could speed the fight up. It didn't matter what you did to Roy. You trap him in a corner, he get out of the corner 7 to 8 times. You try to fight him in the middle of the ring, and he could actually go toe to toe and fight power with you. Trade shots and blows, body shots. And Roy would wait until a certain round to knock you out if he had to. Like most of his fights usually gets to the 10th or the 12th round if he can't knock you out. When he does knock you out, it's not necessarily hitting you in the face or in the head. He can go for a body shot and knock you out. It could be a technical knockout. This is how good he was in the beginning. And it wasn't until like 91, 92 that it became apparent that he was that good on that level. And then of course he fought Bernard Hopkins. He beat Bernard Hopkins in a stunning upset. Like Bernard, for the first 5 rounds, had control of the fight, and then from out of nowhere, Roy Jones Jr. turned into Superman and left hook, Bernard Hopkins. Then he fights James Toney. He beats James Toney. Same thing with James Toney. Toney had the fight in his favor, and Roy turned into Superman and took his championship belt. He took 2 championship belts, made himself a middleweight champion and then a super middleweight champion, making himself a 2-time world champion in such a short amount of time. So you can see why people would try to compare Roy Jones Jr. to Sugar Ray Leonard. At that time period, Roy was still in the beginning phases. His record was like 10-0, then it was 15-0, then it was 20-0. Then he fought Vinny Pazza. He beat him. He beat Glenn Johnson. He would all these guys he would beat, and then he finally got the fight that he was looking for. He fought some guy named Griffin, and he was putting an ass whooping on Griffin. And Griffin won the championship belt because Roy knocked the guy out when the guy was already knocked out. And they disqualified Roy Jones Jr., which I was shocked. That was the first time he had actually got his first loss, which infuriated Roy because Roy was like, you disqualified me and you deemed it as a loss when I ain't never technically lost. And then 6 months later, he had a rematch, like he said in his rap song, and knocked Homeboy out in the 3rd round and took the belt back. So he won the Cruiserweight Championship. He won the Light Heavyweight Championship. That made him into a 4-time world champion. Then he would fight some other people, and then finally, I think in 2000, he got his second loss. It came from out of nowhere. He got a second loss. Roy got a rematch. Roy beat the person, so he was now 32 wins with 2 losses. Then, for whatever reason, in 2001, he vacates the Cruiserweight Championship, middleweight titles. At that point, he had a chance to become the undisputed middle light heavyweight champion, or whatever they call it in boxing. He had a chance to do that. And right in the middle of 2001, he decides he wanted to become a heavyweight. And people was like, yeah, right, you're not going to put on no 30 pounds of muscle. You get killed in the heavyweight division, a.k.a. the Lion of the Giants. Finally, by 2002, he has his last fight as a middleweight. He beats Antonio Tarver, which Antonio Tarver was infuriated because Roy took his belt, then vacated the belt that he took, and then Roy, all of a sudden in 2001, puts on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, almost 20 pounds of muscle for Roy Jones Jr., and gets into the heavyweight division and beats some guy, some unknown heavyweight who beats Evander Holyfield. And that's when people start making these political, I don't want to say political in boxing, I want to say these analytical ideas like, what if we could get Roy to fight Mike Tyson? That would have been a nice, entertaining fight. But the fight I think people really was logging for was Roy Jones Jr. versus Lennox Lewis, because that would have been a chance for Roy to prove he's a real heavyweight. Now he won the fight and took the WBA heavyweight championship or whatever championship in that heavyweight class. Roy was like 220 pounds, and the questions that people were asking is being this big for Roy gonna slow him down? Surprisingly, he retained his speed. He built up some core strength. He had some power. He was a little explosive, not too explosive like Mike Tyson and George Foreman, but he was kind of explosive in a way where he hit you with a fury of punches. And a lot of people were concerned he was going to get knocked out in this fight. Now, there were like maybe 7 times in this fight where Roy probably could have got knocked out, but he retained that speed. And Roy showed that he could put on 20 pounds of muscle and still retain his speed. He had like at least 4 fights as a heavyweight. And I remember when he became a heavyweight, he got a challenge from James Toney. And James Toney was like, I want to fight you. Because it was 2002 and James Toney had became a heavyweight, which I'll get to. And Roy declined because Roy was more interested in either trying to get a fight with Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, or Evander Holyfield. He was trying to get fights with those stars. And after he had 4 fights as a heavyweight, but only 2 championship title defenses as a heavyweight, he gets called out by Antonio Tarver. This is what I do not like and wish Roy Jones Jr. had never done it. I wish he had never done it because he drops the 20 pounds of muscle. All of a sudden, it's 2003, 2004, and he fights Antonio Tarver in a rematch for the light heavyweight title. He looked weak in the fight. He didn't want to be there. For the first 4 rounds, he looked like the Roy Jones Jr. in the beginning of his career. And then from out of nowhere, Tony Tarver hit him with a left hook, and Roy went to sleep. I was mad. I lost money on that fight. Yeah, I bet it. I lost money on that fight. People clowned me at school. I was mad. It's like, why? Like, you were doing good in the heavyweight division. There was no reason to go back down to light heavyweight. And then we see him kind of take a break from boxing, become a boxing commentator for 3.5 years, comes back as a light heavyweight again, picks up 2 more championship belts, becomes a 6-time world champion, and then he fights Antonio Tarver for a 3rd and final time, loses the fight in 12 rounds, loses to Glenn Johnson, fights some of these new generation boxers. All of a sudden, his record is like 50 wins and 4 losses. Then it's 54 wins and 6 losses. And then all of a sudden, it's like almost 60 wins with 9 losses. And you're shaking your head like, the first 12 years of his boxing career, great. The second half of Roy Jones Jr. career is disappointing and damaging. It's like he damaged his own career by trying to do that. And to this very day, people was like, you had a chance to fight Lennox Lewis as a heavyweight. You had a chance to fight Mike Tyson. You had a chance to fight Sam Peterson. All these other heavyweights, you had a chance to fight them. Because Evander Holyfield did good, making the transition from cruiserweight to light heavyweight to heavyweight. Lennox Lewis was once a light heavyweight champion, a cruiserweight, and then Lennox Lewis became heavyweight. So Roy could have actually been in that same category as those guys. And he should have in my opinion, he should have took the heavyweight fight with James Toney because they could have continued their rivalry. We could have got a Roy Jones Jr. versus James Toney part 2 and 3, but as a heavyweight. He ultimately fought James Toney, I think they was going to do celebrity boxing, where they were going to do a heavyweight versus light heavyweight. Never happened. Roy retired in 2007 as a 6-time world champion and became a boxing commentator once again. And, the first half of his career was great. Second half, disappointing. It's like, there are so many fights with Roy Jones you could have got that to this day it still makes you wonder what made him want to decide to go back to light heavyweight. And to me, that's probably why a lot of people look at those Roy Jones Jr. Antonio Tarver fights and go, you should have never listened to Antonio Tarver because that's what Antonio Tarver wanted, to beat you twice out of those three fights. And Roy just was never the same Roy Jones Jr. after that. The second half, his skills declined. Now he's still a good fighter, but the first 12 years, he was good. You couldn't touch him for 12 years, and then he just, I don't know. So when they try to make the comparison to him to Sugar Ray Leonard, now people can argue there really is no comparison. But then again, there is, because with Sugar Ray Leonard's case, he was good for a decade and a half, and then the second half of Sugar Ray Leonard's career, he still was able to show you flashes of what he was in his prime. Where in Roy Jones Jr.'s case, he kind of, faltered a bit because, the pressure, the rap albums. He put out 3 rap albums. He wrote 3 books. He was in the movies, the television shows, the commercials. Roy was just Hollywood at that point. And to me, I felt that was a big distraction. Because if Roy stayed away from all that stuff, he probably could have beat Antonio Tarver and then went back up to heavyweight. He didn't do it, and I think that's what damaged his boxing career, and I think he knows that. I mean, he now looks back on it and go, there were some things he should have not done. James Toney. Now switch over to him. James Toney started his boxing career in 1989 or 1988, around the same time, and he too won a gold medal, but got cheated out of that and needed it for the bronze. Same thing, he didn't turn heavyweight yet. He decided to go into the cruiserweight division. Now, he became a 2-time cruiserweight champion. He became light heavyweight champion, and then he was going to try to become undisputed middleweight champion. And then he won a middleweight title, and then he lost to Roy Jones Jr. Yeah. Then he fought Bernard Hopkins. He almost beat Bernard Hopkins for the middleweight title, lost. Those are like 2 controversial fights that to this day people are shocked of. He eventually beat Glenn Johnson. He eventually fought some of the same fighters Roy fought. And after he dominated for like almost 10 years, right in the middle of 2000 going into 2001, he vacates the lightweight title, the middleweight titles, and does the same thing Roy Jones Jr. does. I'm going into the heavyweight division. And they're like, James Toney, you sure you want to do this? And James Toney go, there's nothing left in these divisions. But she's right, there was nothing left in these divisions. And made his way into what? He makes his way into the heavyweight division. He debuts in 2003, and he puts a whooping on Evander Holyfield. The guy puts on 40 pounds of muscle. He's 240 pounds. The guy is hitting him with some hard shots, very explosive. He looks like an actual true heavyweight. And that fight lasted for 10 rounds. Evander Holyfield almost got knocked out, but gave him a technical knockout. And they were shocked to see a guy come from cruiserweight, middleweight, lightweight to heavyweight, and then beat up a 4-time heavyweight champion, Evander Holyfield, in 10 rounds. Fight was scheduled for 12 rounds. He beats him up in 10 rounds. Gives him a technical knockout. Everyone's stunned. Everyone's shocked. So they, to see if that's fake or real, they give James Toney another fight. Same thing. Knocks out a guy in 3 rounds. Wins 2 fights as a heavyweight. All right, let's give him a second-rate heavyweight contender. Knocks this guy out. Wins 3 fights in a row as a heavyweight. All right, they give him a 4th fight. That's for the number 1 contender, I think either for the WBA or IBF. I can't remember which heavyweight championship he was going for. Wins that. That's 4 fights in a row as a heavyweight. Then he beats up the champion, takes the guy's belt. He wins 5 fights as a heavyweight, becomes the champion, and then when it's time for him to defend his championship belt, right? He beats another opponent. He has his first title defense successfully. So he has like 5 or 6 fights as a heavyweight. And then right in the middle of him getting his second title defense, he tests positive for antibiotic steroids in 2005. And they strip him of the championship belt. And then they go, so all those fights, you were taking antibiotic steroids. Because when he first came in at 240 pounds, the controversial was he was too fat. So he was whooping all those people because he was fat. But when he became heavyweight champion, he looked like shit. He looked like Brock Lesnar. Like, what if Brock Lesnar did boxing and not MMA? And they stripped him of the championship belt. He didn't like that. And it wasn't until 2007 or 2009 that he would, continue in the heavyweight division. He beat up Sam Peterson. Like, I was shocked. He had 2 fights with this guy. The first fight ended in a tie because he was trying to get his championship belt back, which he fought somebody else. And when Lennox Lewis had retired from boxing, James Toney was angry because James Toney tried to get a fight with Mike Tyson. Tyson retired. Yeah, he tried to get a fight with the guy that lost to Roy Jones Jr. and he knocked that cat out. When the guy that Roy Jones beat as a heavyweight, James Toney fought, beat him down, knocked the guy out in 3 rounds. And then James Toney said, I want Lennox Lewis. And Lennox Lewis said, I'll fight James Toney. And for almost 3 years, Lennox Lewis refused to fight James Toney. But who does Lennox Lewis fight? He beats up Mike Tyson. Well, knocks Tyson out. And then he goes and fights Vitaly Klitschko, and then he retires. And he was supposed to actually fight James Toney. And he didn't do it. So when the championship belts were vacated, James Toney won one of those vacated titles. So then James Toney won the title, the heavyweight title, a second time. And then he fought Sam Peterson to a draw. They had a rematch, and Sam Peterson won the rematch, and James Toney was infuriated. He lost the championship belt again. This time he actually lost the championship belt. And James Toney said, I actually won both those fights, but I was cheated. He eventually would get another shot at the heavyweight, but this time, he wanted to fight, I think, the Klitschkos, and they would not let him take on the Klitschkos. So they said you had to win at least 4 fights to do that. It was supposed to be a rematch between him and Evander Holyfield. Didn't happen. Then he beat up one of the first ever Mexican heavyweight. He beat him. And then he was so angry that he retired from boxing, came out of retirement to fight Kim Shamrock in 2010. Somewhere around 2010 or 2011, he took on Kim Shamrock. It was boxing versus MMA. And he did pretty good in the beginning of the fight, and then Kim Shamrock just tore him apart. Just destroyed him in the fight. And then he makes his return back to boxing, wins 4 fights in a row, lines himself with another shot at the title, and loses. And I don't know if it was Anthony Joshua or another fighter like him, but he loses. I think he lost to David Haye or someone else, and he retires in 2007. So when we ask the question, who's better in their prime as a heavyweight? To me, if it's middleweight, light heavyweight, it favors Roy Jones Jr. I think with this, it would have been 3 fights. I think the first fight, James Toney probably would have won because James Toney showed that he had the potential to be a true heavyweight, even though they were picking on him for putting on 40 pounds of fat, and then when the guy got rid of the fat and put on all the muscle, then got on him for taking antibiotics, steroids. To me, it's like, look, you made fun of him for being fat, for being 40 pounds overweight. Then when the guy looks like Hercules, you're mad because he took the drugs. It's like you can't have it both ways. Either he's an overweight heavyweight or he looks like Hercules. Roy, as a heavyweight, didn't do too bad. Problem was, he got challenged by Antonio Tarver, and that James Toney was trying to see if he could fight Roy as a heavyweight to renew their rivalry. And to me, in the second fight, Roy would probably win as a heavyweight, but overall, James Toney would probably beat Roy as an actual heavyweight. Even if Roy could use the speed, James Toney himself had speed with explosive power. So, yeah, that's how this would end. Next time on Boxing What If, fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee, young man rumble, Muhammad Ali versus they could run, but they can't hide, the brown bomber Joe Louis. Next time on Boxing What If.